Good evening. It's on or about 7 p.m., Monday, June 3rd, 2024. This is a regular session of Athens City Council, but we also have two public hearings to get through tonight concerning rezoning. So we'll first begin with the public hearing. The first one is rezoning properties located at 14, 20, 24, 30, 32, 34, and 36 Elliott Street from R3 to B1. Is there anyone who would like to come to the podium and speak on this issue? And if so, please sign the form. Anyone?
I'm Rob Delich, live on Morris Avenue here in Athens, Ohio, and I just want to speak in support of this rezoning. I think going to B1 was the right decision on this. The Planning Commission came up with that instead of the B3 that the property owner had requested initially. So agree that the B1 zoning change was the right approach here. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak?
Paul Hillard, 110 Morris Avenue. I just want to reiterate, I talked earlier, one thing I haven't seen as far as rezoning on Elliott Street, I'd like to echo what Rob said. I think it's a good idea to rezone it, but it'd be nice if we saw some transparency on the intentions of the developer so we could have all the facts and an educated decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience care to speak to this issue? Anyone on council? Administration? Anything to add? Okay, then we'll move on to our second topic. Rezoning undeveloped lots on Grand Park Boulevard and Eden Place from R2 to R3. Would anyone in the audience care to speak to this topic? Please come to the podium. Sign in.
Jeff.
Can you hear me?
I did want to say something at the last topic.
I didn't see you signal to me, so.
Hi, I'm Heather Laughlin. I'm a resident of 8 Grand Park, which is directly across from these things that are going to be rezoned. I have some definite concerns for our quality of life of living there. I would definitely like to see some sort of barrier of the parking lot between the homes at 7 and the parking lot, some kind of grass space, fence, perhaps some trees. And I also have a big concern. I spoke at the Planning Commission. The lights that are there now, I don't know if anyone's noticed that in the evening, but it's like broad daylight, 24 hours a day. So my concern is if we add more lights, you know, if they're going to be shining in our windows at night when we are trying to sleep. So it is a concern. I mean, I think a parking lot is not ideal, but it's okay. But I think that we should have consideration for some lighting because it is really invasive when they're shining in your lights 24 hours a day.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's why we have these public meetings, so people can air their concerns or support or disapproval.
Yes.
So that's why it's a public hearing.
This is my neighbor at 6 Grand Park. He shares some of the same lighting concerns.
Be sure to get that ditto.
Thank you.
Hi, when I lived on Eden Place, and I moved, I've had a lot of people have issues with the lighting, and when I lived on 36, the light was right there.
Excuse me, but we're talking about this particular topic, rezoning development, not about lighting. So, Have to keep it to the topic. It's not my idea, it's the rule. Councilmember Wood, you had a question. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. About the
Member
former
Swank
topic.
indicated we'd have time to talk about it later, so I'll just save it for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else that wants to speak specifically about rezoning undeveloped lots on Grand Park Boulevard and Eden Place from R2 to R3?
I might as well. Rob Delich.
Why not?
Morris Avenue here in the city. I'd also like to speak in support of this rezoning proposal. Again, the property owner requested a different zoning, and the planning commission decided that an R3 was a better designation, and I also agree with this change. I think they made the right decision here. That allows for the potential for it to become apartments or something if it doesn't become a parking lot, or in the future maybe could be converted from a parking lot to some useful housing, rather than a B3 zone, which would be a purely commercial zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the right decision. Again, speak in support of this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Looking up and down. Member Swank.
Yeah, I was just waiting for the public. We finished with those.
Anyone else from the public? If not, I'll allow a member of council to speak.
A couple of questions for Director Stone, perhaps, and also for Mr. Mott, perhaps. Mr. Mott represents the applicant. We're talking, Director Stone, we're talking about a change in zoning. Maybe the law director. I know when someone comes for a variance, the council can put conditions, restrictions, considerations as a part of that variance. When it comes to rezoning, is that within our purview, or is it I think I'm getting, is that a nod? Is that within our purview? And the clerk seems to think it is.
It would be an amendment.
It would be an amendment?
Right, I'll attempt to answer as best as I know, and I'm getting a little outside the bounds of my experience here. So since I've been service safety director, no zoning change that has gone through city council has had a caveats attached to it. You know, it's just basically a straight up zoning change associated or not a zoning change based on recommendations of the planning commission. I do believe if you change the recommendation of the planning commission, that it's got to be a supermajority to pass it, but I don't think that there would be a barrier to that. However, like I said, I've never seen it, but certainly the clerk has probably seen a lot more zoning changes than I have, and would be a better expert than perhaps the law director.
Okay. I think where I'm going, though, is dependent on the answer I get from Mr. Mott. Mr. Mott, as the property now stands, the parking, we'll call the parking area, starts at East State Street and goes north to the property line there. Do you know, sir, with this proposed parking lot addition in those five parcels, will it be a continuation of what already exists? Or do you see it being separate with some kind of divider in between?
First, you probably would like me to sign in.
Yeah, I'm not present tonight, that's.
So I don't specifically have details on that, but I can answer your question in about probably 4 different ways.
Okay.
When you say continuously, you mean like without a break from south going north?
Yes, sir.
That's what I would anticipate. It's either that or looking at an increase in the number of required curb cuts on Grand Park or Eden to get vehicles in and out. Frankly, my client's goal has been, let's see what we can get it rezoned to before spending money on specific site development proposals. Not sure that's helpful.
Somewhat related to what Mr. Delock was talking about, or no. Paul was talking about earlier, wanting to know use. What I'm getting at here is, if I heard the Planning Commission correctly, about 60% is the limit of parking space that can be put on those 5 lots.
Correct, 60% of basically impermeable surface.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So by doing it contiguous to the existing parking lot, that's 60%, that leaves 40% of the space green to the north of that, between the new parking lot or the parking lot extension and the homes of the residents.
Depending on the specific configuration, I can't say how much will be to the north versus how much on the east and west, but I don't see any practical way to do it where there is not green space on the north.
Okay.
And in fact, I think my client intends there will be some sort of green space or barrier at the northern end.
Because what we're getting at is a response to the concerns expressed by the residents of that area. And when I mean residents, literally across the street.
Yes.
One, the lighting. 2, the separation of the parking lot and the resident, particularly on Grand Park, the very, very first resident there on the northeast side, and an appropriate barrier. And that's where I was going when I asked Director Stone, can we put conditions on that? Personally, what I would like to see, and this is me, but listening to the folks in the area, are 1, no more lights to the north. I can already golf and see my ball at 10 o'clock at night because of the brightness of those lights. Secondly, ideally would be a barrier of green vegetation, very similar to what you can see up around Canal Winchester on that Lithopolis Road. Starts out at 6-8 feet and they grow to 40 feet tall, which would be a natural barrier. I'm sure the Tree Commission would be very excited about that, as opposed to a wooden or chain link fence. So I guess what I'm throwing out is, are these things that we might want to insert in the form of an amendment? Do we ask for more detailed plans before we pass this? Because I'm in favor of businesses being able to do business, and the ultimate goal is to give you more space, that your client, more space for more inventory, more car sales, more tax for Athens and Athens County. I mean, that's a good economic development goal.
And presumably more jobs too.
And more jobs, yes, exactly. But to do it in a way that's sensitive to people who, when they bought their properties, whether it was in the last 5 years or they're now third generation, basically bought property next to what used to be an airport when the airport moved. I mean, it's a major change. That's why we fought the B3, because we didn't want that property to turn into another Avon place.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Would it be possible to get some more? Would it be possible to get some more detailed plans from the Hyundai folks?
So it may be, but I think that would be premature, because until we have a rezoning, it's not going to be possible for my client to have plans prepared that would comply with the zoning for that area. There's different zoning for R1, R2, R3, B1, all of them. They all have different bulk controls. For example, I believe that the R3 has a setback requirement that I think the requested B3 perhaps did not. Mr. Stone may know right off the top of his head, I don't. But there are different bulk controls, and until we know what those bulk controls are going to be, my client can't really effectively prepare plans that we could put forward and say, this is going to meet all of the requirements for that zone. I would also emphasize that there are requirements for light pollution controls. There are requirements for, I think for a parking lot specifically, for fencing. There are requirements for green space, shade trees. All of these things are built into the code and would apply to any property, and they will apply to this one the same as they will any other. And so all of those controls built into the city code are there to help make sure all of these concerns are addressed through the development phase. But at this point, we can't say exactly, oh, this is what will apply, so this is the plan that we have to put forward.
Well, I can't speak for my fellow council members, but if the concerns are addressed through your plans, I plan to vote yes for an R3 variance. And the things you quoted are minimums. And I think what the residents of the area are interested in is more than minimum.
I'm sure they are interested in more than minimum. You had also mentioned whether council could put conditions on the rezoning. I actually looked at that question earlier today, and I am not going to presume to take the role of your own counsel in advising you. But what I found was that Ohio has said almost nothing on that topic over 200 years. To me, it is a very gray area, and one that, frankly, I am hoping we don't have to get into.
Yeah, agreed.
Member Spilnes?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this catch-22. You don't want to give plans unless you approve, and we don't want to approve unless you get plans. Or I don't. I'd prefer not to.
Well, it is a bit of a catch-22. Developing plans isn't just something that happens. It takes time and it takes money. And my client is looking to put his money into projects that will enhance economic development, both its own and in the area, and does not want to spend the money developing plans on something that may ultimately be rejected entirely. If the rezoning is completely rejected, my client would prefer to have not spent the money to develop a hypothetical.
Member Wood?
I think the logical thing to point out here is your client wouldn't retain you if they didn't have plans.
You're assuming clients are logical. I can tell you from experience, many are not. If the council would like plans, I can ask for plans. I do not know if any exist. My impression is at this point they do not, because my client's been waiting for the result of the rezoning. I also don't know if they could be prepared within the next 2 weeks. You would have them available for your next meeting.
By plans, I'm talking about something as simple as what my 3-year-old granddaughter plays with. A big green board with Legos. And the existing parking lot could be yellow, and the proposed parking lot could be blue.
I can certainly discuss that. I had anticipated you would want full architectural
No,
site
sir.
plans.
No, sir. That would be an unfair burden
Yes,
placed
I
upon a
can
business.
certainly work on getting that for you.
Yeah, sketching on the back of a napkin. Some of the best business ideas in the world have started that way.
Yes, indeed.
Compact.
But I guess the question is, from your perspective, is this a reasonable request that this body might make of your client?
I'm sorry, specifically as to requesting plans?
Yes, more detailed intention for the property.
I don't see where my opinion matters, Mr. Swank. If this council wants to ask for it, whether I think it is reasonable is irrelevant. If you are asking for it, I will work on getting them for you.
Okay. Just trying to work in the spirit of cooperation, sir. Now, one other thing I must mention, Mr. President. Next week, a variance request will be coming to this committee on the existing property. A variance for East State Street and a variance.
Special use of right-of-way permit application.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Excuse me, special use of the right-of-way for East State Street and Graham Park. And there are some concerns about that, not the Graham Park part, but the East State Street part. Are the two connected? How would partial granting of the special use of the right-of-way affect the parking situation?
I'm not sure if it directly would. I think it may be more the reverse. If the rezoning is granted, then my client is able to develop additional space and may be able to move some of its inventory from the front towards the back. Certainly not all of it, I'm sure, but some of it. Whereas I don't think that the special use of right-of-way permit will really impact what may or may not come from the zoning request.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I noticed some extra people came in during our discussion. We are discussing rezoning underdeveloped lots on Grant Park Boulevard and Eden Place from R2 to R3. If any of the members of the audience would care to speak on this issue, please come to the podium and sign in and give us your name.
I have to write my name right here?
I assume so, I can't see.
Okay. Sorry. My name is Stephanie Hunter from 204 Elmwood Place. I wanted to make a suggestion, if it becomes cumbersome, to amend this particular ordinance. Perhaps Athens could look into strengthening its dark sky ordinance instead, and therefore affect all the properties in the city who are dealing with light pollution. It might be a more elegant solution.
Thank you. Would anyone else? Otherwise, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to our regular session of council. Going once, twice. All right, I conclude that the public hearing on both topics is concluded. And we will now go into a regular session of City Council. First of all, we will establish a quorum, and I believe all members are present, so a quorum is here. Next is communications from council members. If any council member has a communication they care to share, the member Spionis.
Yes, it's come to my attention, and actually it's my issue too, that the path from, and this has come up before, but has been raised quite a bit the last couple of days. There's a lot of foot traffic now from the Kershaw Green set of apartments, and there'll be more, to the Go-Mart, which is across 56. And there is really no effective place to walk there. In fact, it's extremely dangerous, and people in my neighborhood and other places have been very concerned about this. There was quite a bit of traffic about this on Women of Athens today, but also when I was canvassing this weekend and talked to my neighbors, they also expressed a lot of concern about the fact that they're afraid to run into them. And it's very stressful to try to drive past people who really have no place to walk. With that in mind, I did get notes from the Athens County Active Transportation Steering Committee walk audit that was done last year by a group of citizens. A couple of them are here, Stephanie and Rob, that had to do with the University Estates, Kershaw Green, Lurig, Armitage, 68256 areas. And there was a long set of notes after walking that corridor, and this was provided to the city administration last July in 2023. And it goes, I'm not going to read it all, of course, but it goes into quite a bit of detail about the concerns, and now there's a lot more people, so it's an even larger concern. So I want to express my hope that we can do something about it. Some suggestions have been made, and it's not my place right now to go into it all, but I'm hoping that we can address that in some way, shape, or form sooner than a few years from now, when conceivably somebody could be hit by then. So anyway, I just want to express that because it came up quite a bit in the last week.
Well, thank you. Other members of council? Member Wood?
Yeah, I received a message from Elizabeth Story that lives in the 3rd Ward about the invasive vines that grow in the trees and things. And I was shocked to find out that a bunch of the vines in my own trees are probably killing them. So it turns out that the kudzu that looks real nice is not so great. She asked that we encourage landlords to cut them down whenever possible. I went out and found a bunch, and you can yank them off. They'll also get under your siding and mess that up as well. So it's good to remove the invasive vines when you can. So that led to a bit of an education. It's all over, it turns out, the kudzu. So that was an interesting bit of education that the resident asked to share.
Well, thank you. From a personal note, I decided to yank some vines off my house, and it turned out to be poison ivy, and I decided vines are okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a PSA, along the lines of the dig
Yeah.
before you, call before you dig. There's probably a.
Something like that, yeah.
Look up the poison ivy before you.
Other members of council?
There's an app for that.
Members of the administration?
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I have three items of communication. One, I'll just to let everyone know that the mayor is representing the city of Athens at the International Town Gown Association in College Park, Maryland. He is presenting numerous sessions over the next few days. I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the mayor's office receipt of a letter from Ms. Peggy Gish asking that the city joins the Solid Waste Council of Governments and also to contract with the Athens Hockey and Recycling Center. And finally, I want to note that as we speak, the NAACP is meeting at the Ohio University Inn to form the local unit. Some of you may be aware that this has been in the process, or many of us thought was in the process for almost 2 years now. It turned out that the local leaders had some misinformation about the proper way to actually start a new chapter or a new unit, and they are rectifying these issues tonight with some leaders from both the Dayton and the Columbus state level NAACP leadership. It does appear that there will be need for additional members for our local unit, so you may see people coming out to talk to you about the NAACP and how we can start a chapter here in Athens County. That's all I have. Thank you, Member Reisner. Director Stone?
Treasurer, I see you in the audience. Nothing? No good news about interest rates or anything?
They're good.
That's all I need to hear. Let's see, we've done reports and communications from other elected officials. So now we're to the point of ordinances for third reading. I will read the title of the ordinance and then hand it off to the council member who is sponsoring the ordinance. Ordinance 46-24, ordinance City of Athens, Ohio, Whites Mill Cap Section 1135 project modifications for improvement of environmental design and construction project, Athens County, Ohio, introduced by Councilmember Swain.
I'm going to read the first part because it pretty well sums everything up. This is many paragraphs, but I don't think there's a need to read them all. This is an ordinance authorizing participation and ratifying prior participation of the City of Athens, Athens County, Ohio, with the Department of the Army Corps of Engineers for the design and construction of the Athens, Ohio Whites Mill Cap Section 1135 project modifications for improvement of the environment, and authorizing the Service Safety Director of the City of Athens, Ohio, and other City of Athens, Ohio officials to act for and on behalf of the City of Athens, Ohio, in executing, accepting, or otherwise approving all documents, agreements, instruments, or other necessary papers required by the Department of the Army to implement said participation in the project. Before making a motion, I do have a question on section number 5. Excuse me, section number 4. And this may be best answered by Director Stone. Section number 4 reads, "The Service Safety Director of the City of Athens, Ohio, and other appropriate City of Athens, Ohio officials are hereby authorized to purchase or otherwise acquire from private property owners in the name of the City of Athens, Ohio, in accordance with said agreement, any and all interest in real property necessary for the construction, operation, and maintenance of the property." Director Stone, does this, in essence, give the right of the exercise of eminent domain?
No, because that would require an additional step, right? This would be, an eminent domain action is an action adverse to the desires of the owner.
Right.
This would be and that requires, another step, basically,
Okay.
from this body. that we,
So this simply authorizes you and other appropriate city officials to, if needed, purchase the land. If the owner of that land doesn't want to do that, then we would have to take additional action to either exercise or choose not to exercise eminent domain.
correct.
Okay.
And of note, this section was a requirement by the Corps in their cookie cutter, very wide-ranging agreement. Because this is the study portion of the 1135 process, I don't anticipate any acquisition until such time that a construction project is in place.
Mr. President, I would move the council pass 04624.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Discussion? Anything? Any member? Administration? Public? Okay. All those in favor of adopting 46-24 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it, and it's passed. Ordinance 47-24, an ordinance authorizing the local share of the United States Army Corps of Engineers Hocking River Study, introduced by Councilmember Swank.
You've read the introductory part. Bear with me since we will be appropriating money. 2 other paragraphs. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $40,000 to Stormwater Fund 755.635 TC 500. Section 2, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $300,000 from Stormwater Fund 755.635 TC 500 for said local share. This is our share, and the money is coming from the Stormwater Fund. When you get your monthly utility bill, you will see a line item on there for that amount. It's either $1 or $2. And that money is accumulated over a period of years for expenditures such as these so that we do not have to go to the general fund. Mr. President, I would move the council pass 4724.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Sound like a tie. I'll let the clerk figure it out. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Administration?
Nothing from me.
Public? Okay, I'll have a vote. All those in favor of adopting 47-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. It's been adopted. Ordinance 48-24, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 25, Flood Damage Prevention, Chapter 25.01, General Provisions, Section 25.01.07, basis for establishing the areas of special flood hazard, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. In a moment, I'm going to make a motion to table this ordinance based on some new information we've received from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources regarding floodplain management. And before I do that, I'll invite our City Safety Services Director to share any comments about that.
Thank you, Member McCary. I did get notice from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Department or section, floodplain management section, that in addition to the changes referencing the new maps, there are a couple other aspects of our ordinance, of our current section or Title 25, that have to be updated as well. And so, in that we weren't prepared, with those changes for this evening for you to pass this, and we still have some time because the new maps don't go into effect until September. I'm requesting the tabling so that we can make those amendments, and then when this body gets back from recess, to go ahead and do an amendment, and then go ahead and continue through regular order, so that we only do this one time, and I don't have to come back later and say, okay, now I need you to change it again.
Therefore, based on the explanation just provided, with our need to update this ordinance, I would like to move that we table ordinance 48-24. Sorry.
Second.
We've had a motion to table and a second. Any further discussion about tabling this ordinance? Again, okay, all those in favor of tabling ordinance 48-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. 48-24 has been tabled till some future date. Ordinance 49-24. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a 2024 to 2027 partnership agreement with the Athens County Commissioners as applicant and guarantee, if funded, for submission of an application to the Office of Community Development, Ohio Department of Development, ODOD, for the Community Housing Impact and Preservation Program, CHIP, and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance 49-24.
Second.
This is an ordinance that has been discussed and now being read for the third time. We also had 1 month ago a visit from the director of HAPCAP to answer questions about this really phenomenal tradition we have of working with our county commissioners and the city of Nelsonville to establish resources for improving housing in Athens County. Section 1 indicates that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into a 2024-2027 partnership agreement with the Athens County Commissioners as applicant and grantee, if funded, a copy of which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference for submission of an application to the Office of Community Development, Ohio Department of Development, for the Community Housing and Impact and Preservation Program known as the CHIP grant. Section 2 reads that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of Athens, Ohio, in order to meet the June 20th, 2024 ODOD grant application deadline, and it shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Member Swank.
A question for Director Stone. Director Stone, I'm not as familiar with grants as I'm sure you are, but looking at this, administration of this grant represents 12% of the total grant. Is that pretty much in line with grant administrative costs?
This particular program is pretty much operated completely independent of city administration. If there was a partnership to where, you know, we're doing some work and the managing agency is doing some work, I would say that was a little high. But given that HAPCAP has successfully managed this program and administered it completely to the point that the city functionally really isn't involved, you know, other than to suggest homeowners and refer them to the program, I think it's probably in line.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any further comments? Members of council, administration, audience? Very well, we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting 49-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. 49-24 has been adopted. Ordinance 51-24, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title III, Administrative Provisions, Chapter 3.03, Executive, Other Officials, Section 3.03.21, Investment of Treasury Funds, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. I would like to make a motion that we adopt 51-24.
Second.
Thank you. This topic has been discussed in committee and read twice. I am not an expert on treasury funds, but we do have a treasurer in the audience, if he would care to speak to this. say anything about it?
I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay.
Your golf game.
Administration, would you care to say anything?
Just whether he's paying attention or not, the treasurer does a great job, and the auditor's off.
I can speak to it real quick.
Okay.
If you want to.
All right, you can redeem yourself.
Sorry, I should've-
Mulligan.
No, again, this is just simply, this is just, all we're doing is we're just authorizing, the auditor to place, interest that we would normally disperse throughout all the accounts, and just go, we can now place it in, and mostly the general fund is what we're looking to do.
Exactly.
There are certain other funds that will still get the interest they deserve, but most of our interest will go to the general fund. And as you asked earlier, yes, interest rates are very high, and we actually just have received a nice chunk of interest from an investment that we just redeemed a couple days ago. So this is why we wanted to do this and try and get it done right away. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Any further discussion Member Clotfelder?
May I ask a question of the treasurer?
Oh, you can ask a question of anybody.
If you wouldn't mind. What you just said sounds kind of auspicious, that you just got a really good money back from an investment.
Correct.
Has that helped our level? You know, we're trying to get to 9%.
Well, it will help it a little bit, yeah. You know,
Okay.
again, basically, we invest in different investments throughout the year. Some things come due at different times. Most recently, we had a certificate of deposit with Hocking Valley Bank that was a sizable one. So as a result, we deposited $394,000 the other day into one of our bank accounts. Now, not all that might go to the general fund, because again, we still have other funds that we have to consider that do get their portion. But it will help the general fund. As to the level, the 9%, I can't speak to that. That would be
Okay.
the auditor. You would have to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else from council? Administration, anything? Audience? All right, well, I believe I did move to have this adopted, didn't I?
You did, and
I'm so
seconded.
thrown off by that, I just, okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt 51-24. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. 51-24 has been adopted. And here is an ordinance that I think really has a major impact on just about everybody. Ordinance 52-24, an ordinance authorizing the 2024 street paving and repairs project number 370, introduced by Councilmember Spielness.
Thank you very much. I will just say that this is something we do every year because we have streets to fix and maintain and upgrade, and so that we can keep in good order around the city. So I'll just go through this real quickly. Whereas Ohio University is participating in the annual paving program and will contribute an amount commensurate with their share of the work, and whereas city administration will seek an amendment to this ordinance upon determination of that amount. So the city service director is hereby authorized to accept bids and enter into contracts with the lowest and best bidder for 2024 street paving and repairs, Project 370. The 2024 appropriation ordinance 13023 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $400,000 to Street Fund 220, $200,000 to State Highway Fund 226, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 3, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $600,000 as follows: $400,000 from Street Fund 220, $200,000 from State Highway Fund 226, and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. So I propose that we pass this ordinance.
Second.
I have a second. Very well. Any further discussion? Oh, okay. Member Swank.
Another quick question for Director Stone. When do you anticipate being able to publish the list of streets that we're going to pave? Because I know in at least 2 cases, we have neighborhoods that publish newsletters, and that would be a good thing for them to get into their respective newsletters.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank. I wish I had here tonight that I could tell you. I will commit to you to get that out prior to the council going out of session or going on recess. So.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up on that question. Thank you. So do we have any input to that at this point, or is that list settled?
I mean, historically, certainly when people draw attention to particular areas that need attention, we evaluate it in the overall pavement condition rating system. And, in some cases, we'll change and we'll pull something off because there's an interest somewhere else, or there's a demand or a need for whatever reason somewhere else. We don't always select the absolute worst streets, because in some cases there might be a planned water line or sewer line that is going to go in, or gas line, in the next couple of years, and so we try to hold it off a little bit longer as opposed to just do that one. So it's not just a cut and dry take the worst on the pavement condition rating. So to your point, if you have suggestions, certainly send them our way, and if we can fold them into the list, we will.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that there is a rating system that's pretty specific. So it's not, who they like or some random thing. It actually has some science behind it.
And we've really tried, over the years to avoid that, to avoid like the mayor has definitively said, don't pave by my house, right? Because we don't want to make it appear as though, somebody called the most, and so they got their street paved. And instead, we have a rating system that goes 0 to 10. We've done it since I've worked here, and that's been over 20 years now. And it's produced a pretty good product over the years, and I think we've kept things in pretty good shape.
So you heard it here. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, did we get a second yet?
Yeah, we have a second.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion, administration, anything else? Public? Streets? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting 52-24 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. 52-24 has been adopted. Now we have a series of second readings, and what we normally do is I read the title of the ordinance, and then if there's some further information to be brought forward by the sponsor of the ordinance, they're free to do so. Otherwise, I'll just simply move on to the next ordinance. Ordinance 45-24, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to pay the 2024 membership fee for the Outdoor Recreational Council of Appalachia, ORCA, to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax for the Bailey's Trail System, along with other recreational activities, introduced by Councilmember Wood. Ordinance 53-24, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to take all steps necessary to join the Southeast Ohio Recycling Terminal Sort Council of Governments, COG, and to provide the annual dues payment, introduced by all council members. Member Swank?
At our meeting on May 20th, I had 5 questions that were asked. I've sent those to Director Stone, and he answered each and every one of them in great detail, and I appreciate that, sir. The one that seemed to garner the greatest amount of conversation dealt with the withdrawal from the COG. And if you'll indulge me, 3 sentences from Director Stone. As it read originally, or as the ordinance reads, the mayor may decide to withdraw from the COG at their discretion. And there was some question about, and then the second part, any member wishing to withdraw from membership may do so by serving the president with a certified copy of a duly adopted resolution of the members' governing board. The question was, do those 2 things say different things? So what Director Stone said, and I agree with him 100%, it says, I would interpret this that if a mayor decided to withdraw, they would provide the president with a copy of ordinance 5324, the one under discussion, indicating their authority to do so. Certainly, council could amend the ordinance to not grant that authority to the mayor. At this point, can't change the agreement. Council is considering it an up-down manner. So what we're looking at now is the mayor may decide to withdraw from the COG at their discretion. In essence, we're giving him that power. And in essence, that would serve as the duly certified copy of a resolution of the members' board. In other words, we give him permission to do that. So we're good. So that's how I interpret, that's how Director Stone interpreted, that's how I interpret. So the other 4 sets of questions, anybody wants, I can forward this email to you. But he took time in great detail to answer all the questions succinctly in a manner I think we can move this forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ordinance 54-24. An ordinance rezoning properties located at 14, 20, 24, 30, 32, 34, and 36 Elliott Street from R3 residential multifamily zone to B1 neighborhood business zone, introduced by Councilmember Swank. Ordinance 55-24.
Here we go.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I'll comment here now. I mean, I do think, as we've been talking earlier in the hearings, I think it is important that we have some sort of plan. At least the Donwood plan came with a transparent answer that was honest. I think to come and ask for all this without being transparent about what they're actually intending to do, to me, insults the intelligence of council. And for me, I intend to vote no on it.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question. Excuse me, sir.
Very well, you're recognized.
So let me ask you a question.
You got to keep the form.
Rather than voting no on it, would it be a possibility to table it with the implied request that the applicant come to this body to share what they're, because maybe they do want to put something in that meets the approval of everybody, and then vote accordingly. I just throw that out as a consideration.
I mean, that would certainly make sense to me, and I think that would be suitably respectful.
Yeah. Well, this is just a second reading, so it can be done. Very well.
Well, by tabling it though, the individual could come to the next meeting, explain it, and we pick it up and go. Of course, if we wait till the next meeting and table it, it just delays the process.
True. But of course, if we don't table it and they come to the next meeting to explain before we even have a vote, that might accomplish the same thing.
True.
But on the other hand, I think you're using the table as sort of a leverage to get that person to come to council to make an explanation.
That's and I think that's a reasonable request. So, yeah,
So are you calling for a vote then to table?
yeah, motion to table it, sure.
Is there a second to table?
I would second that.
We have a motion to table and a second. Is there any discussion about tabling this ordinance, other than what's already been spoken? Member McCary.
Thanks. I will just ask if our Assistant Law Director has any insight into our power to request the level of transparency that Member Wood is requesting. So we're talking about rezoning right now, and I'm just not sure if we can invite someone to come and share additional information, but am I correct in understanding that they have the right to say, I don't have to give it to you? Yeah, okay. Just wanted to, is that sound reasonable? Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I don't think we have the power of subpoena, do we?
No.
Sadly.
And apparently, the way things work anymore, even if we did, they could ignore it. So,
Don't go there.
so where are we now? We have a motion to table, we have a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for Go ahead.
Rob Delich, 104 Morris Avenue here in the city. Just I think a point here is that if you're trying to get the appellant, that's not the right word here, but the property owner to tell you what he wants to do with the property, if he does that, it doesn't really change anything. He's not held to that unless you were to write it in somehow into the rezoning. So I don't know what good it really does. You can watch the planning commission meeting where he said what he was going to do, and maybe that's good enough. I think maybe pushing this point with tabling it just delays things, and I don't know if it helps. My 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you.
So if it's in the record, what he said he's going to do with it, what did he say he's going to do with it?
Yeah.
I remember Thomas has a point.
I mean, he had a couple vague suggestions, but I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Delatch. He doesn't have to tell us. He's not going to be held to it. The Planning Commission looked at it several times over if you've watched the meetings. I don't see a point in tabling it. We can ask him, but he doesn't have to tell us. I'm not sure it really is helpful. And if we want to change anything, it has to be, as we said before, a supermajority. We can either deny it or I don't know. So, I mean, I just hate to go against all the Planning Commission's work for something that we're not allowed or guaranteed to get.
Let me go to Member Spiel and Member Wood.
Well, both of you, two people have now said that he said in the planning commission meeting what he intended to do, and yet, no? And yet, so what is it? What if it was more clear than what we've received? I'm just curious.
He mentioned possibly a warehouse, possibly a donut shop,
Oh, well, we already heard that.
nothing very specific. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think.
Well, I can see how those two would be related.
Yeah, if I
Oh, Member Wood, please.
may. Yeah, I mean, I think we got sort of a non-answer. And again, started a couple businesses, and I've never gone this far without having a real clear plan. So yes, he could come and stonewall or, theoretically lie to us, which, that's a play, or refuse to come and speak. And I say that I could, refuse to vote for it. So that's my respectful point, is that I will not vote for something if you're not going to give that common respect.
Okay. Excuse me. It's like a case of bronchitis. We have a motion to table. It's been made, and there's been a second. We've made a discussion here. I'll call for a vote.
Could I make one comment first?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I wonder, given some good comments that have been made here, if it might be worth considering waiting until next week to see if perhaps this property owner would volunteer to come and give us more information. And if not, and if council feels strongly about it, maybe we could table it at that point. But hold off on slowing down the process until we give him a chance to respond.
My other point, of course, is that I myself won't be here in 2 weeks, so notably, that's part of the point, but
Member Swank?
I've had several conversations with the business owner, very, very good and productive conversations. And per your comment, Beth, I would be more than happy to make that call and invite him. I think that might be a less, even though I moved to second the tabling, I think that might be a more cooperative and less threatening approach. Because at the end of the day, we're going to take a vote, and we all have the opportunity to vote yay or nay. But I think I could call Mr. DeLuca, invite him to come to our meeting on the, whatever day that is, 17th, with as clear plans as he can provide us. No strings attached.
Legos not required.
I'm gonna hear that the rest of the year. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
What you put forward.
So, President Pro Tem?
Yes.
So I wonder, Member Wood, it was you that I think proposed tabling. Would you be offended if we vote no on tabling at this point and then wait and see what happens and keep the option of tabling at a later point if need be?
I don't take offense at anybody's votes, so, you know, I won't take offense at that, certainly. And again, since I myself won't be there, I can't do anything beyond this current meeting, so, so I certainly won't be offended. I think that, you know, obviously we ask for folks' vote, but, you know, that's everybody's prerogative.
Okay.
Well, have we talked our way through this up to the point where we can call for a vote?
So why don't I withdraw the second?
Draw the second.
Can I do that?
I never heard of anyone withdrawing a second.
Only if he withdraws the first, okay.
No, there can't be a second unless there's a first.
Right.
Yeah. So unless Member Wood would withdraw his motion to table and let this whole thing just sort of
Play out in 2 weeks.
play out in 2 weeks, yeah. It's up to you. Eh. Does that mean yes or no?
I'm not getting the feeling that council will vote to table it, you know, so I respect that. So we can move on.
So you're officially withdrawing your motion to table?
Sure.
Okay. I love democracy.
Good discussion.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along. Let's see, where are we? That was 45-24?
54.
No, that was 54, I'm sorry. 55-24. An ordinance rezoning undeveloped lots on Grand Park Boulevard and Eden Place from R2 residential, one-family/two-family zone to R3 residential multi-family zone, introduced by Councilmember Swank. Ordinance 56-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 1524, authorizing the Service Safety Director to close streets in the uptown area for special events during the 2024 calendar year, introduced by Councilmember Spionis. Member Swank?
Again, Director Stone, when we close the streets, who pays for the costs associated with the setup and tear down? Not stages and things of that nature, but traffic, bagging, so on and so forth.
Thank you, Member Swank. In nearly all cases, the city pays for it. Their costs come out of different funds. You know, one of the funds is the general fund, but, you know, in many cases, those employees, police officers, are working anyway, and they'll bag meters, you know, the shift that's on duty, so there's no overtime associated with that. And so that's a sunk cost. The fund that pays the most is typically the street fund, because that is the crew that establishes the temporary traffic control devices beforehand, and then comes back in and tears them down afterwards. And given that many of these events are on weekends, that often is an overtime cost, so that is a cost. I can't think of a time where, I take it back. There have been occasions in the past when there have been like for-profit organizations that have come, requested closures to make money to do something, or we have passed the cost entirely to the organization. But insofar as there's been a festival in the uptown area, or an event to promote the businesses in the uptown area, or whatever else, the city street fund has paid for it.
So what you just said, don't those benefit for-profit organizations? The reason I asked this, put this in context, because I'd never thought of this. Saturday night, my wife and I went uptown, went to a movie, and then went out to eat at a restaurant. Ironically, about a half hour after we were in the restaurant, the mayor and his wife walked in. There were a whopping 3 tables at 5 till 7 in this restaurant, which routinely on Saturday night is packed. When people hear there's a festival uptown, what that does to some people is scares them from going uptown. And in talking to the 18-year manager of this restaurant, this happens every time there's a festival where we block off Court Street. So I'm curious as to your point, why are we not passing on our costs, particularly when our general fund is in the situation that we're in today, to those who sponsor these activities, particularly since you mentioned the word overtime. I'd be real interested over the course of a year what the city's outlay is for these. Am I anti-fest? Absolutely not. I go back to the days of South Green Fest, East Green Fest, West Green Wet Fest, and the big one, Spring Fest. It's something good in a vibrant community. But, can we afford to continue to do this? And are we aware of the economic repercussions for businesses when we close Court Street? And I'm not expecting an answer, I'm just...
Well, I can speak briefly to that.
Shocked me.
Sure. I mean, and from this particular ordinance is to close for the Juneteenth celebration, which is a section of East Union Street that's not in front of any frontage for businesses other than a realty office. And so I don't know that there's an impact for that particular closure. Regarding the wider idea of, I don't know that fest is the right word, but Dora Days, or the various events in the summer, I think there's been a concerted effort over the recent years to promote activity in the Central Business District in the non-OU academic year. And we collectively, both this body and the administration, have made the determination that the outlay is worth it in order to promote activity in the Central Business District. Now, it's possible that, that activity is beneficial to some businesses and not others. Regarding who we would ask to pay for it, I don't know. I don't know that we'd go around to the individual businesses to say, okay, who wants to do this? Because there's not one place that does the closure. It's kind of a collective group of folks that if we close the street for a Dora Day, that they go and then arrange for the festivities on the event. So I guess I would answer and say that it's probably an event by event decision. Certainly, we can come up with what a cost would be for a standard closure. I do think, like, if I went to the Lions Club that's done the cruise in for decades and said, hey, you guys got to pay now for this closure, there'd probably be some pushback on us. That's just an example, obviously.
Yeah. Member Wood?
Yeah, I appreciate Member Swank bringing that up. It was certainly a brutal Saturday for my shop. I know it was a pretty rough day for everybody on my block. So appreciate the note, certainly. And also I was curious that I don't see 6-1 on the closures list on the thing, on our list of closures. Neither here nor there, but I don't see that day on our list. But yeah, it is a burden, mostly, especially for retail. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it is at yours, Jessica, but
I've talked a lot about this over the years. What Director Stone just said was correct in the event by event, and that this is specifically for Juneteenth. I think this is a good discussion to have in committee at the end of the year, or when this comes up as an ordinance, because we do it as one big block. Mostly as education and discussion. A lot of these are what in AUBA we call legacy events, where they've been going on for so long that everybody expects them, plans for them, and knows they're happening. We're having more pop up, and I think that's good for more discussion when we come at this next year, because this year's already established and done. But yeah, it's brutal for some areas, and it's beneficial for some, and it's finding the right balance. Deputy Director Chicky's done a really good job of what he calls right-sizing these so that they're not the full length of Court Street anymore. They are the size that is appropriate to the number of people coming and the time of year and what they're doing, which has really helped a lot in the last few years.
Okay, member.
To her point, Mr. President, which committee would this come from?
Transportation.
Normally transportation.
Transportation.
Yeah.
Street closings.
It'd either be that or a committee of the whole.
Yeah. And remember, what does bring an interesting point, we didn't approve this
Which one?
one Saturday night.
They have 24 hours leeway on these dates. So they should have been Saturdays, and they got put in as Fridays, but I believe the city and the police have 24 hours leeway to move a date.
Is that in the ordinance?
I think that's just legally. I'm not sure.
Can you go back?
So we could have Halloween on Sunday?
Well,
Why not?
if there's a mistake like these being entered in
It's a
correctly, I
pagan
think that's when
holiday.
they do it, not just for kicks and giggles.
I thought there was a different place where it talked about flexing it based on the. Yeah.
Interesting.
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah. Topic for future conversation.
You know, it's possible there was an error.
Yeah.
You know, this makes reference to this makes reference to, in fact, there was, to 531 rather than 61. And then section 1 talks about to change requested dates or cancel events, you know, accordingly. So, you know, that's basically what we did here to deal with that error rather than come back and have you correct the error.
Okay. All right. Ordinance 57-24. An ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a 20-year lease agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Administrative Services to lease 8.334 acres located north of West State Street for proposed soccer fields introduced by Councilmember McCary. Ordinance 58-24. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of soccer netting as part of the West State Park Soccer Fields Project Number 355. 59-24. An ordinance amending Section 22A1 of Ordinance 132-23, the 2024 Fringe Benefits Package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. 60-24, an ordinance amending Ordinance 28-24, correcting the transfer amount needed to make an interfund transfer, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 61-24, an ordinance amending the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 62-24. What? Okay, so we're going to have to amend it tonight then. All right. Ordinance 61-24 needs to be amended before it can be adopted. And the amendment reads, Section 2, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is further amended by decreasing APR Income Tax Fund 2273, Transaction Code 300, by $96,887, and increasing Transaction Code 500 by the same amount, and increasing and decreasing the total appropriations by said amount. So we have to make a motion to adopt this amendment to 61-24, which will send it back to a first reading. So I'd like to make a motion that we make the amendment.
Second?
And is there any discussion about this?
Well, what does this do?
Member, administration, please.
I'm not a member of anything.
Well, you're a general, so you must be a member of something.
Not of this esteemed body. 05824 makes reference to a series of authorizations from different places to pay for this project. When we built that ordinance, I thought that 96,000 and some dollars was in transaction code 500 of the annual appropriations ordinance. It was not. It was in transaction code 300. And so rather than go and fiddle with that particular ordinance, we're just putting it in the right place where it needs to be expended out of, which is out of the capital lines as opposed to out of the professional service lines. Thank you.
Member Spilnes?
Is it a problem going back to first reading and going through all this again? Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, I believe, and so all those in favor of making the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Ordinance 61-24 has been amended and is now back to a first reading. Last but not least, 62-24, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contracts for the Woods Edge Infrastructure Project number 370 at University Estates, introduced by Councilmember Swain. You have further information?
Last question from for Director Stubbs. Do we have any updates from 2 weeks ago from the developer on the three conditions that we had discussed?
So it's interesting that you asked that question, Member Swain, because I just mentioned to President Crow, or Acting Mayor Crow, I got an email from the attorney this morning that he's not ready yet to finish the document that's the other part of this. That's the revised TIF agreement and revised ordinance, but it's close. And so my plan is to basically share that immediately with you and then explain it to the developer at the same time.
Anything else? Okay, we're now at announcements and other business. Reappointment to the Affordable Housing Commission. Do we have Member Spilnes?
Yes, I am the chair of the Affordable Housing Commission. And Molly Fitzgerald, her term is up June 30th. She has been she's our secretary and has been very helpful. Molly Fitzgerald is the executive director at the Athens County Economic Development Council, and so therefore has a valuable view of housing-related issues on the commission. And so I urge everyone to allow her to continue for another 3 years.
Anyone have any comments about this nominee, a reappointment? Member Clodfelder?
I'm highly in favor of
Very
reappointing
good.
Molly
Yeah, I
Fitzgerald.
want to just add one other thing about that. Currently now, after a few years of not meeting, we now have a fully functional, full membership in the Affordable Housing Commission.
Good.
And I'm going to bring up one other thing that we'll talk about later, and that it, well, no, I won't. We'll bring it up later. Never mind. I don't want to mix issues. Let's just vote for Molly to continue.
Okay, so that's your motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Member Clodfelder. So all those in favor of this reappointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. The reappointment has been made and approved. Now we have opportunities for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. If you have anything to say, come to the podium and put down your name and address, and if you represent a group or just yourself, and tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Sam Jones. I go by Morgan often. I live in the Plains. I have lived in Athens all my life. I am here to echo what Councilor Spielness said earlier regarding 682. So just to give you a little bit of information about me, I am the Hub Data Coordinator at the Corporation for Ohio Appalachian Development. I am very much in the nonprofit social determinants of health space. And we all know that access to safe and reliable transportation is an issue in this county, in this region of Ohio writ large. But I've noticed personally, driving down 682, a very noticeable and very sharp spike in pedestrian traffic alongside 682, specifically between Lurig Road and the intersection with West Union Street. However, I've noticed a lot of bike traffic along 682 between Union Street and the Plains. It's not just that one stretch, it's the whole road. But I wanted to talk to the council about potentially putting in some safety infrastructure. In my mind, this is an emergency. I really do not think that we should wait until someone dies by getting hit before something is done. As we discussed earlier, we definitely need some kind of infrastructure put in, like a sidewalk. And I say this in recognition that that is not an easy or a quick or a cheap process. But we should do something to help these people have a place to walk that is not going to get them or their pets hit. Just on the way in to join this meeting, there were 2 pedestrians on the shoulder of that road, one of whom was walking a small dog. But I just wanted to talk about a few ideas that maybe we could consider. Definitely increased lighting, because at night the visibility is a nightmare, especially if people are not wearing reflective clothing, especially if people are wearing headphones, not having any kind of flashlight on them. That can be very dangerous. Reducing the speed limit in that area temporarily might be one thing we could look into doing. I know that the intersection between 682 and West Union Street is going to eventually become a roundabout. I would urge the council to consider putting in crosswalks before that project happens. We need to acknowledge in our infrastructure that those pedestrians are there, and we need to be urging traffic to stop for them. At the moment, it's a lot of swerving. It's a lot of getting a little too far left, which is also a possible cause for collision. And I don't want to go up against my time here. I know that I'm on a clock, but sidewalks would be really the best and most obvious thing to do. Unfortunately, also the most expensive. I would recommend something that you probably already know about, grants through the Department of Transportation, the Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A. Maybe something worth looking into. That way this isn't on the city's dime entirely. But just to give some data points from the Accident Analysis and Prevention Journal, this was in March of 2022, the likelihood of a pedestrian crash along roadways with no sidewalks is 1.6 times greater than the likelihood of a crash without the presence of a sidewalk. The likelihood of a pedestrian crash per mile along roadways with no sidewalk is 3 times greater than the likelihood of a crash per mile with the presence of a sidewalk. And in March 2021, this is coming from the Governor's Highway Safety Association, a 501c3 dedicated to highway safety. In 2021, 69% of pedestrian fatalities occurred in locations where no sidewalk was noted on the crash report, up from 59% in 2017 and continuing a steady upward trajectory in recent years. This is an opportunity for us to do something that is really positive for folks who are coming into this affordable housing. It is a wonderful thing that we are getting this. It should have really been done in the planning stages, that those sidewalks, those pedestrian walkways should have been planned and installed alongside the construction of those apartments. However, the situation that we are in now is that there are folks walking alongside the road, and I don't want them to get hurt. That is all I have to say. Oh, and I forgot to introduce my address. I apologize. 4 Blossom Lane in the Plains. But thank you all for your time and for your consideration to this matter. If there's any way I can get involved, I will stay after and see if there's anything that I can pitch in personally. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Kate Blythe, Morris Avenue in Athens.
I wanted to bring up, thinking about these two public hearings that we just had earlier in this meeting, it's come up a lot that we are not getting site plans. We don't really know what's happening when businesses or other people are coming forward for rezoning requests. I just wanted to bring up that it's not uncommon practice in other jurisdictions. I work in other states, admittedly, not in Ohio, for site plans to be required for any kind of rezoning request. And especially considering some of the recent discussion that has come up about like Athens being one of the top 15 growing small towns or whatever. I don't have the specific citation right in front of me, but this is maybe something that's going to start coming up more and more in the future. And we might want to consider looking at our application process and how our commissions are handling rezoning requests and other such requests, variance requests, right-of-way usage requests, et cetera, to see if there's a way that we can amend that so that we have more information about how different changes are going to impact the city as a whole and neighborhoods, rather than just looking at the narrow, small picture that we get specifically talking about one business. So, wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rob Delich, live on Morris Avenue here in the city, just representing myself at this point. I'd like to sort of add to some comments about the 682 corridor. I was one of the people that Member Spielness mentioned, did a walk audit of that street about a year ago. And I think the thing that to me was the worst part of that pedestrian corridor was crossing the road at the light at Union 56 and 682 at that intersection. Because not only are there no crosswalks marked, but you can't see as a pedestrian if there's a turn signal that's telling cars to turn into your path as you're stepping off, not even a curb, as you're stepping into the roadway. You have no visibility on what's going on with the lights. It's not designed for pedestrians at all. Not just that there's not a crossing signal, there's no crosswalk, there's none of that. You can't even see the lights and see what the status of the lights are to know if it's safe to cross or not. So our group of 6 or 8 people had to be very careful. We had to just make sure there are no cars in the turn lane, because we couldn't tell if they could turn or not. It's a very dangerous situation for pedestrians. Probably the worst part of it is right there at the intersection. So the suggestion of the other individual that talked a few minutes ago, that maybe one of the low-hanging fruit, one of the easy things to do might be to do something at the intersection that would be little or no expense, potentially. But it's hard to come up with a good solution, I think, for the roadway itself, because it would, like she said, sidewalks are expensive. But maybe something at the intersection. So just a suggestion that there may be something that could be done. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Stephanie Hunter from 204 Elmwood. I was also on that walk on Route 682, and I would like to further emphasize that it really is a dangerous route. When we went to cross the road initially at the intersection, the road Armitage leading to Little Fish, we had someone lean out of their car to yell at us to use a crosswalk. Well, there isn't a crosswalk, and we were wearing high-vis vests. So imagine how people who are not similarly outfitted as obviously doing something are being treated along that road. And so I would like to third pretty much everything that Morgan said. I think they're all fantastic ideas, especially striping that crosswalk right away. Furthermore, there are some very simple things that can be done to slow speeds along there with little expenditure. So you know those speed limit things on East State Street where they tell you 25, 26, too fast. Those can be installed. Those work. People see the feedback and they slow down. And that, if ODOT allows it, could be another simple fix. But it really does need a sidewalk. It's not a safe corridor. It's a very narrow one. It's not well lit. Cars go fast. And I'm a pretty seasoned pedestrian. I found it scary. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, temporary?
Service Safety Director Stone can supply some additional information about that intersection.
Right, I think it's important to have this body here, and I suppose the guests that are here tonight as well, that there's a lot of focus on this particular area, and it's not being ignored. So number one, the 68256 roundabout project is under design right now, with a goal of bidding that in early 2025. So construction will probably take place through the end of 25 into 26. My gut feel is that's a challenging enough project that it'll be a 2-summer type project, especially if we're going to maintain traffic in all directions when we go to do that. That will include significant lighting improvements, significant pedestrian improvements at the 68256 intersection. Additionally, as part of that, we're doing preliminary engineering on the stretch that goes from State Route 682 and 56 up to, past the entrance to University Estates in Kershaw Green. Now, it's important to note that preliminary engineering is looking at solutions to solve both the traffic speed concerns and really change it from more of a rural highway feel to a city street feel. Because that's functionally what has been happening. Is it's taken and been a rural highway that now is really turning into a city street. Kershaw Green was a target of opportunity to expand housing in the area. I would have liked to have planned it better. If you go back and watch Planning Commission during the time that Kershaw Green was coming forward, that was moving very fast. And one of the things we pushed very hard with was a commitment of the developer to improve pedestrian access to the wider pedestrian infrastructure. Included in that project was a $70,000 commitment from the developer to the city to allow the city to build pedestrian infrastructure to serve that. The trouble is, it's complicated. The area south of Lewig Road down to State Route 56 is not in the city limits. Okay, so if I want to do anything, number one, I got to either get people to annex, or ODOT has to be fully on board, and functionally it's a state highway. They have to be fully on board anyway with what we're doing. But I can't just go and do work in that area because it's thing. Number two, there's a railroad there, and coordinating with and there's a bridge over a creek. So coordinating with a railroad and a bridge over a creek are also extremely complicated. That said, we're applying for small cities, the next round of small cities funding, to do a major project on that stretch from State Route 56 up to past the University Estates intersection, past past Kershaw Green and that facility, or that housing development there, because we know that this is an area, and this is one of my highest priority areas in the city. It's not being ignored. I just can't make it happen like this. And I got to get the funding lined up to do it. I got to get the areas of the city, but we're going to tackle that. And it's, like I said, it's one of my highest priority areas in the city to have a major project, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take multiple millions of dollars to do the right kind of project there. Thank you.
Okay, one last shot.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning those things. I know that it's not like wave a magic wand and poof, it's better. Is it, in your opinion, is it possible to get crosswalks in prior to the 2025 roundabout project? If we can get the low-hanging fruit, I think that could put a lot of people in much better positions. I, of course, would love to see what happens later down the line when things are actually possible with ODOT's participation. But I'm wondering if you or this body have ideas on, and this is a nebulous question that I know doesn't have an easy answer, on when we could get crosswalks or signs along the road, what that timeline might look like for just the easy stuff we could do at relatively minimal cost, and also what we as a community, especially those of us who live in the plains and travel that corridor frequently, what we can do to increase awareness of this issue, especially for drivers, so people know to look out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to, okay.
My name is Kathy DeVecca. I live at 1 Miller Street here in Athens, right in the city. And I just wanted to say how pleased I am and how grateful that the city's moving forward with the Council of Governments. And I'm just thrilled to have that happen. I know when I came to Athens over 30 years ago, I thought I knew about recycling. And my neighbors and the city itself has taught me so much, not only about cycling, but composting. My neighbor, you know, I've lived in this city maybe 4 years, and he built me a compost bin. You know, and I've just been able to teach. We're now teaching another neighbor. So it's just thrilling to be part of this. And I'm so glad that you're holding on to this valuable asset. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Albert Enos, 19 East Carpenter Street. I was at we did a bike race on 682 for like breast cancer awareness. I leave my bike over at OD and it was horrible crossing that road. Not ever doing that ever again. And I've been down where Lure Road. It's nothing but ditches and people falling and cars go way too fast. But I think they should put like a crosswalk in for the like they do cross from the village bakery thing. That works great. I mean, but people are not gonna follow the rules. I guarantee it. If they had a bus stop like right there, it'd be great. But you know, crossing the road to get to the bus stop, someone's gonna get hurt. And as you said on the Kershaw Green, I'm going over there, but it's horrible. It's bad. Like, something needs to be done. I mean, roundabout would be great sometime soon. Someone decides to die or ends up dead, you know. Like people in wheelchairs have to go through too sometimes, so. God, I mean, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm sorry? I don't think that's the right one, is it?
That's the right one, there's just no more lines, if you want to put it right at the bottom there.
Or turn it over.
There's nothing over this side.
I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We are adjourned at 8:38.